So at this point, I think we've all seen the Z Fold6, the Galaxy Unpacked event that Samsung just had yesterday. But in this video, I want to kind of tangent off of that and let's talk about the Pixel Fold 2. Maybe it's going to be called the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, which is a terrible name, but it would indicate that it is part of the Pixel 9 lineup, which should be announced on August the 13th and released sometime shortly thereafter, with the Z Fold being out fully unveiled. This is the primary question I want to explore in this video. Did Samsung leave the door wide open for Google? Before I get into that, there's one sort of like addendum that I need to add to this discussion, right? There is not apparently going to be a OnePlus Open 2 coming this year. It will be next year, which means that it is, in terms of American buyers, and I know I'm going to get a million comments from people saying, what about the Vivo phone? What about Honor's foldable? What about Xiaomi's foldable? And I get that. They all look really, really, really good. But the problem is you can't go onto their website. You can't go onto Amazon. You can't go to Best Buy. You definitely can't go to your carrier and buy those phones. So for the purposes of this video, we're going to ignore them, okay? They just aren't relevant to this discussion. Yes, you can import them through GizTop or whatever it might be. Most people aren't going to do this, and you just have to understand that, okay? For the US market, it's Samsung, it's OnePlus, and it's Google. And for this year, it's just Samsung and it's just Google, which means, again, back to that question, did Samsung just leave the door wide open for Google with the Pixel Fold to take the crown as top new foldable? I think it's actually entirely possible that even after Google goes, the best overall buy you can make in terms of an American foldable, not an American-made foldable, a foldable you can buy directly in America, might still be the OnePlus Open. And I talk about that quite a bit in another video, link in the description. This time, let's give the Pixel Fold 2 its flowers, and we're going to focus on it. So what did Samsung do with the Z Fold 6? Maybe that's a great place to start because we don't actually know what the Pixel Fold 2 is really going to be like for the most part. Samsung came out and honestly, they didn't do a whole heck of a lot. The device has a new boxier design. It does have a cover display that is a little bit wider than it was before. In fact, in some images, it looks relatively close to the OnePlus Open, which is relatively, actually very close to the Pixel Fold 2. So a step in the right direction there. But what didn't they do? They didn't upgrade the camera hardware at all. I think we stuck with 12 gigs of RAM. The charging speeds are still the same. And then in terms of new experiences, they really only showed off like one thing that was kind of like new and interesting to me. It was the ability to sketch something and then have that be generated with AI. More impressively, sketch something on top of a photo and have that be generated in AI. That was a very, very cool feature. But look, I don't think that I'm like telling any tales out of school here when I tell you that most people have been very underwhelmed by this thing. This poll is still going. It's still early on, but you know, from 1 to 5, I had people rate it. 1 being extremely, the most disappointed / negative that you can feel. 5 being absolutely elated. Most people are in the middle, but most people are in the bottom half of this. Most people are really just underwhelmed by this. It felt like they came out with a very tiny, very iterative release that just didn't do a whole lot. And on top of all that, they raised the price by $100. So yeah, disappointing for a whole lot of people. Now don't get me wrong, it's going to be a great phone. A lot of people are going to love that phone. But for a lot of people, it was just disappointing. What about the Pixel Fold 2? Right now, we know very little about it other than probably exactly what it's going to look like, which seems like a lot. But you do need to know the software features and you do need to know the specs. And we just don't really have those yet, which is kind of surprising for Google. Let's ship over to this article from all the way back in February, showing off 5K renders of what is reportedly the Pixel Fold 2. We'll stop on this image here for now. What you have here is a phone that has a form factor that is remarkably similar to the OnePlus Open. In fact, if you kind of plug in the rumored dimensions, it's remarkably close, underlined, bold-faced, to the OnePlus Open. Of course, we have gone from a camera visor, a bar, to having this sort of camera stovetop up in the upper left-hand corner. It appears to me like you still have a primary wide and ultra wide and a periscope telephoto, perhaps a depth sensor up in the other corner, something like that. Obviously, this phone is a lot taller than the Pixel Fold is. If it's going to be similar to the OnePlus Open, yes, it's going to be getting a lot taller, which means that when it opens up, it is not going to be a landscape foldable anymore. It's going to be switching to a taller than it is wide, actually very close to square aspect ratio. And you can see that in this image here. Again, very, very close to square under display selfie camera. If I'm not mistaken, I may be wrong about that, but I think that they said it was an under display selfie camera. Correct me in the comments, I may be wrong about that. And then a hole punch for the cover display. This is a pretty radical change from the original Pixel Fold, which I think has confused a lot of people because one of the biggest things people praised about the Pixel Fold was this cover display. So many people said, wow, it's like I have a miniature flagship phone that, oh, by the way, can open up into a tablet. So you have the benefits of a miniature flagship phone, the one-handability. You can reach the top of it, much more easily. It's not particularly wide. It's only about as wide as a normal flagship, but it doesn't have that insane height of a normal flagship. But when you run into the issue with a miniature flagship where you're like, man, I wish I had a bigger screen for this particular moment, well, guess what? You have an absolutely massive screen, so you kind of have the best of both worlds. With the Fold 2, you're abandoning that. You're going to have a normal phone that effectively just turns into a bigger normal phone instead of a small phone that turns into a landscape tablet. Do you see what I mean? I'm disappointed by this, but it may have broader mass appeal. Remains to be seen exactly how that's going to go. Now, in terms of internals, we do know a little bit, right? So since this is launching with the Pixel 9 series of devices, more likely than not, it'd be really weird if it didn't, it's going to be running the Tensor G4. So, of course, the current Pixel Fold runs the G2. The Pixel 8 devices ran the G3. We're going to leapfrog the 8, join up with the 9, and run the Tensor G4. So, comparing the first Pixel Fold to the second, this thing should be significantly faster, significantly more efficient. Not quite the fully custom-made TSMC fabricated Tensor G5 we're waiting another year for, but it should be a pretty darn big improvement. Don't get me wrong, the Z Fold6 is going to be faster. It's going to have better efficiency. It is going to have a better modem. These things are just going to be true. But the Pixel Fold 2 is not going to be terrible, just like the original Pixel Fold wasn't terrible. But one place where the Pixel Fold 2 might have a big advantage is with on-device AI tasks. As confusing as that might be, the Tensor is made to do these things, and the Pixel Fold 2 is rumored to have 16 gigabytes of RAM. That's a lot, and it's more than the 12 that the Z Fold 6 currently has. Why do you need all that RAM? I've talked about this already, but when you take a large language model and you unpack it on your device to just be there whenever you need it, you need a lot of RAM, and I believe that is what this extra RAM is going to be for. We've talked about this quite a bit. Rumors about this Google Pixie Assistant, probably just a code name, but it sounds remarkably similar to what Apple just did with Siri. There's a demo that Google actually did on stage. I believe Sundar was actually one on stage talking about this. He said, in the near future, you're going to be able to take a photo of a pair of shoes and say, I need to return these. It's going to look through your emails, find the email where you bought them, find the return form, fill it out for you, and then pop out and just say, here's your return label, go take it to this location to return it. That is exactly the kind of stuff that Apple then only about a year later, maybe less than a year later, would sort of try to unveil with Siri, where they're saying, when is my mother's flight? It goes through her text messages, finds the conversation, finds the flight number, gives her the information. This is very, very similar. We've heard rumors about this Pixie thing, multimodal, on-device, stuff like that. I believe that the Pixel Fold 2, the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, will be doing the same sorts of things that we're talking about. Perhaps it's only the Pro models, but the Fold should be included. And if that is true, it is going to really differentiate itself from the Z Fold. It's going to have hardware that will likely be able to compete, but maybe directly lose. It's got camera performance, which I believe should absolutely throttle the Z Fold. Let's be honest, this phone probably already hangs with, if not outperforms, the Z Fold in many different ways. So the Fold 2, I think, will take it up another notch. And then if you add in the Google AI features, guys, Samsung spent about half of their Z Fold 6 time talking about Google features, talking about circle to search and translations within circle to search and things like that. Google's going to have more of that stuff. They're going to have that software experience. Now, look, if you really just love the Samsung experience, you love the S Pen, all of that stuff is absolutely valid. But you have to admit that they came out and they announced almost no new features for the Z Fold. And I think the Pixel Fold 2 is going to have a plethora of new features, one of which is going to be an absolute headliner, and that is that Pixie Assistant. I think that the big question is going to be the price. Do they see Samsung going up by $100 and then say, we'll do that too? Or do they see the opportunity to undercut them and leave that price in the same place? Or in the perfect world of all possible worlds, they'd lower the price, knowing that the OnePlus Open is still going to be very competitive and is already significantly cheaper than their device or Samsung's device. Probably not, but that's the big question for me. Where does that price come in? What I want to know from you guys is, what would it take for you to declare Samsung left that door open and Google absolutely stormed through it? What do you need to see from the Pixel Fold 2 to say, in terms of the US market, it's now the foldable to beat? Guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe for more content just like this, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.